Okay, welcome everybody. We have Nicola back to share some yoga asanas. Was it specifically for summer and how to um, maybe achieve a better asana? So, I'm a yoga teacher. I do teach a class once a week, but yoga isn't it's not my main gig. So I think it's really good to bring Nicola in because that is her main gig is the yoga. So, yoga is her life. And I think it's really important to have somebody who's really teaching regularly, really going through the asanas, the training. You've updated your training, I'm sure, over the past decade. I haven't done much updated yoga training in the past decade, so I've been so focused on the Ayurveda. So yeah, I'm really glad to have you here to dive deeper into some of these poses. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what's going to happen now?
Sure. Well, thank you, Justine, for having me on. It's a subject I really love to talk about. And most of all, maybe for those who don't know me, I am like from Austria. I have been living in Finland for 15 years, and yoga has been part of me since 2001. So that's when I discovered yoga, and I really felt like, oh, life has changed because I always looked for something which is not so much like practice. Let's say like this, when I was studying, I never found anything what I would be really interested in, because nothing taught me anything about life. And so when I found yoga, it was about life, and so that what got me hooked me into it. And I had did my first teacher training in 2003 or 4, something around that. And then over the years, I have been going through different schools, but since 2012, I'm like a Purna Yoga teacher. And I say this specifically because it's a trademark in the US. My teachers have created this system which is based on Iyengar. And because Iyengar has been the master of asana, for those of you who know Iyengar. But my teacher, who was a disciple, he was a student of Iyengar. It was actually his godfather. He was practicing or watching him teaching since he was 3 years old. So he was sitting with Iyengar and his parents, who was practicing with Iyengar, watching them doing the practices. And when he was 7 years old, he was allowed to start practicing. So this man, this is my teacher, he has a lot of experience, as you can imagine. He's now in his 60s. And so he has like 60 years of teaching or practicing yoga experience. And at some point, when he was actually also part of bringing yoga into the West. When he was practicing and teaching Iyengar for all these years, at some point he realized something is missing, and that was the real of yoga, because it was very asana focused, even though Iyengar is a genius, absolutely. He developed all these parts, how the brain works when you do certain asana. But for Adil is called my teacher, Adil Palkewala. He felt that there is something missing, which is the whole yoga, and that is meditation, that is lifestyle. And this is where Ayurveda is part of it as well. And also actually applying the philosophy. Because if we are just doing one thing, we're actually missing out on another. And that's why I'm also so interested in Ayurveda, and especially with Justine, where we live in this season, in this climate where we are, is that we want to implement the yoga into our daily lives. And so when it comes to yoga asana, I have been practicing this now, as you know, since 2012. I'm also teaching teachers, and the precision of it and the power behind it, it's only over the years it gets me more, because we all started maybe with practicing physical yoga. And then we realized, oh, but it feels so good, and it does this and it does that. But then for me, it only started to become more powerful when I just noticed also my own changes, the changes I went through by doing them. And so what I wanted to talk to you about is how the asana specifically can be used for something. So first of all, we talked with Justine about like, okay, what to use more in summer and what, the different seasonal yoga. And so in my own way of the way I see asana is that all asana can be used in all seasons, but what you focus on is different, right? So if I'm doing a certain pose, which gives me lots of fire, I will work more on the grounding part, because there is no pose which is only fire, because you cannot be firing up something without being on the ground, right? So for example, a grounding pose, a standing pose, is where you're connecting with the earth. So maybe those of you, of us, I am one of those Vata people, very much in the head, including in the Vata season. I would need to ground more, right? So I need to go down. But then I realized, when there's a time when I get a little sluggish, and then I can do the same asana and put more fire to it, because then I lift more, right? When I need to ground more, I work with the down. And when I need more of this energy, I work my way up. So in that sense, I think asanas can be used. It depends, of course, on the focus, and it depends, of course, also on the teacher, who's giving you, because it's not just that you know an asana and then it's like, okay, this is how you do it. It's more like, what are you doing with it today? For example, I practiced a pose called Trikonasana. We all know the triangle, right? We're using lots of Sanskrit in our teaching. Um, I practiced in this forever. And you would think, like, doesn't it get boring? You have been doing this over and over again. But each time I practice this with my teacher, I find something new. There's a nuance which I haven't felt yet, because after all, the yoga asana is not just about connecting to the body. We are going deeper. We're actually connecting to our spirit. That's in the end the whole purpose of asana, really, so that we can connect and bring more light into our bodies, so our cells become more alive. And so that's why practicing a pose for 15 years hasn't, what you would think, made me bored of the pose, but on the opposite, it made me more excited, because now I feel like something new in it, and that's pretty nice. So what I have prepared for you is a few basic asanas, and those are all like in groups, because we are putting different asana in different groups, and then they have their different benefits. In Purna Yoga, we look at it as a whole. So we do all of it a bit. And like I mentioned before, it depends on the season where the focus lies. So what are we going to do more and when? So if you just let me share my screen.
Mhm.
Uh,
I really
I
like
think,
that you have this Iyengar background because my first teacher was an Iyengar teacher. And I think that's
oh
really
yeah.
great, especially in the beginning when you're learning, because it's really about the alignment. So I felt like my first teacher really taught me proper alignment. Yeah.
Without alignment, nobody should do yoga, because we know now there's so much injuries. People are getting injured from doing yoga asana practices because it's fast. For example, all these vinyasa, fast moving ones, when you're not told where to put what, you're going to hurt yourself eventually. And I get a lot of people in here because they knew that we are looking at alignment, and that we are almost, because the yoga is actually, the asana is therapeutic in the end. So we are looking at that, and we have been taking care of a lot of people. So yeah, good to hear that you have that background as well, that you have had some Iyengar. So, well, this is my studio. This is how I just started here. And then here, I just mentioned the benefits of asana, why it actually been really lost in the West, because we have only focused on the body. But actually, interestingly, in India, and this is, I'm just speaking what my teacher has told me, is like there, the body is neglected. They're all about spirit, 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 and they don't care about the body. Whereas we in the West, we are all about the body, and we don't care so much about the spirit. I even sometimes have people who say, I would like to do yoga without the spiritual part. And then I say, sorry, but that's not yoga. It's okay to do gymnastics. It's okay to do, but then just don't call it yoga, I would say. So
Especially
in our
can
in
call
our philosophy, we are looking at it as a way of getting closer to ourselves, closer to our whoever. Somebody wants to call it my soul, or somebody wants to say to the universal energy. It doesn't matter. In the end, we are all wanting to know a little bit more about ourselves. And through the asana, you actually start to get to know that. Yeah, at first, I only knew that there's a body, and then I realized, oh, there's also an arm and another arm, as a child. And then as you grow up, you start to realize, oh, there's so much more about you. And that's what the asana is really about. So here, if you think about the different categories of, for example, now I have the standing poses. And the general benefits of that they are strengthening the legs. And actually, we are teaching this, that for every beginner, it's the most important. If you don't start with the foundation, everything else you'll do will not have exactly the same benefits. So that's why standing poses are so important. So you see, they strengthen and align the hips, they bring the hip in joint. A lot of older people nowadays have so many hip replacements because they're doing things while they actually don't mobilize the hips, right? So standing poses help the mobility of the hips. It helps us more ground, which comes back in Ayurveda, right? During the Vata season, we all want to be a little bit more grounded, and then just strengthening the whole body. That's the reason why I put that there. Developing stability, balance, and confidence. And think about that. It's not only about that now I am stable here in my pose. It means that when I go out in life and something hits me, I'm going to be grounded, right? So it's about life. It's not so much about doing the pose itself. And then standing poses are the foundation of brain-body connection. What I have learned personally, this has also, of course, to do with the Vata-ish kind of mind, is like I was really unfocused. My mind was all over the place. And I feel when I do the asana, it just puts me into, yeah, it like draws you in. It like almost forces you to come into the body. So that's what standing pose is about. I have a few examples here. And then this is my teacher when he was young. So I took some old pictures of him. So Trikonasana, where there's then the specific benefits, because at some point you want like the legs, everyone needs strong legs, right? Because we need to support the back. But then we need to stretch the hamstrings, we can work on grounding, we work on the alignment points. So these are all similar or the same kind of benefits, but then a little bit more specific, because one standing pose is different than the other standing poses. And what do we look for in this? And one big thing for us in asana is also the safety. Like, for example, you can do this pose, anyone can do this pose, but I know that most of the people do it wrong. If you go on Instagram, you see Trikonasana and you're like, oh my God, these hips are out of joint and people are hurting themselves. So for example, what he does, nobody in this studio does. We all have a block under the hand, because when you go down to the floor and the hip is not in joint, you can actually injure yourself. So somebody who's really open, really flexible like he is, he can put the hand on the floor, but most of the people can't. That's how you see in the picture. It's a little bit of a different, but it's our Anna here at the yoga wall, where you're actually also supported. So we do use a lot of props, which is very Iyengar. And then here, for example, this is just, if you think about it, it's also a standing pose, but it's a wider stance. It opens the hips more. It gives a feeling of the side. And so when you work on, for example, sometimes I work on breath. I need to help people to breathe better. Then I would choose this asana and not the Trikonasana, because it lengthens the rib cage. It opens up the diaphragm a little bit more. So it really, and again, like when we come into Ayurveda, maybe in the summer you don't want to hold it so long because it gives you too much heat, but at the same time you want all the other benefits, so you can still do it. So then the next one, so that's one of the most important parts, which we call the king and the queen of asana, which is Sarvangasana and Shirshasana, the head and the shoulder stand. And downward dog, like here in the picture, is also considered to be an inversion, right? What's really important about that, and a lot of people don't know, is that, first of all, the benefits these inversions have. So if you think about that, the inversions, they strengthen the immune system, the circulatory system, the endocrine system, the digestive system, the respiratory system, so all of the systems, right? So it's like absolutely the healthiest thing you can do is go upside down. And only yoga has this kind of system in it, inversions, because I don't know where else. Maybe in gymnastics they swing around, but there is no other kind of sports or any athletics where you're upside down and over a prolonged period of time. So the reason why it's also so good is because it turns the abdominal organs down into the other direction. And you probably know, Justine, when you're like, for example, somebody has a digestive issue, usually it lies at the bottom. Yeah, the problem lies at the bottom. It's at the end of the colon. Even with cancer, it's at the end of the colon in the stomach. It's at the bottom. So because we don't invert, everything pushes down with gravity in one direction. And that's so important why we should do inversions for that reason, just to mix up everything. It's a kind of a detoxing program. So
Yeah,
when you do just
that
eat
has
detox,
sorry to interject. Ayurveda has a term for it, actually, apanuvayu, which is the downward flow or the downward motion of vata. So
absolutely, yes.
downward flow of vata is sometimes it can reverse in people where it actually goes in an upward movement. And this is where I recommend these asanas, sun salutations, for example, that include the downward dogs to try to get the balance back so that the apanuvayu can flow naturally in its downward position. So that some people can actually correct the movement of vata just by doing these inversion poses.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking like, for example, when people do your detox, during that time, it's you just boost the system to have the detox be more efficient. Like I always notice that when I've been doing it, like I do asana on top. I mean, I don't, I say I notice it. I don't really know if I notice it that clearly, but I know I'm doing it because I know it will help better to push out what needs to come out. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely important.
Yes, the yoga and the self massage are super important during the detox. It's
Yes,
definitely going to
absolutely.
make it more effective if you combined all of those together.
So now I'm going to go into just a few the detail. First of all, the contraindications, because this is again something which people don't know that they shouldn't go upside down when they have certain contraindications. And most of all, if is of course things in the head like epilepsy and stroke. If there's any eye problems like glaucoma, neck problems, that's mostly for headstand and shoulder stand. High blood pressure. So people who have high blood pressure, they say like, oh yeah, but I'm on medication, I'm fine. But I don't let anyone go upside down, even when they're on medication, because I feel that it's still there. The problem is still there. The medication is just taking away the symptom, right? So that's how we consider it. And then it's of course a period and acid reflux, hiatal hernia, which comes together. Also, when with the period, I know a lot of people who said like, "Oh, I've been always inverting," but then once I did it too long, I started to feel really bad. And most of all, because during menstruation, we try to eliminate the blood, which is actually filled with toxins. And when we invert, then the body reabsorbs it. So it's really important, important thing. But that's probably most yoga teachers know the thing about the menstruation, right?
I think they finally do, like in the past decade. I think people have been talking about it more. And I'm glad that you put here actually about this, about it being different for men and women. So this is true where I think this sort of bloodletting therapies, which is a traditional therapy in Finland where they do the cupping, the blood cupping on the back to release the blood and the toxins. I think that's actually usually more helpful for men and needed more for men here. Or even, for example, I will do a little bloodletting from the ears. For example, if I have a client that has, if the iron is too high or the blood pressure is too high, or there's indications of pitta that there's some issues there, I will do a little bloodletting just from the ears because that surprisingly releases a lot of heat,
Mm,
the head area specifically. So yeah, I think women don't necessarily need these bloodletting therapies as much as the men do.
the same. Yeah, it's fascinating, right? And then the thing, think again, like now you have all of it. If you only do this or if you only do that, but now you can work with it on a whole level as well. And like you said, maybe the man, the man can invert anyways all the time, but it's a good point. Yeah, they need to release some toxins as well. We
I
are
think
just lucky.
traditionally also like men used to they used to bleed more. Like they would injure themselves doing hard work or they would be fighting and things like that. Where now that's not so common. So they're really not losing any blood unless they're intentionally trying to do it.
True. Good point. Back in the days, they were more like doing these manly things where you hurt yourself. So coming back, I have a few more inversions, and I'm going to put these also just because people see these inversions a lot out and maybe practice them as well. But the neck is a really big problem in the shoulder stand, the Sarvangasana. And that's why I show this picture here with the pads, with the support. This is how Iyengar taught it. Basically, the reason is because we do not know, or not know, we cannot roll the shoulders so much under the body so that the neck stays in a curve. So if somebody goes up into the shoulder stand, just like that, without the support, the neck starts to flatten, and then that creates a military neck. Have you ever heard of that? It's like when people are like this, they look like this. And a lot of people who, for example, who come back after practicing 20 years of Ashtanga, they have these kind of necks. Like my teacher here from Finland, who I first met before Purna Yoga, she had done exactly that, 20 years of Ashtanga. She got the curve back through therapeutics with this kind of practices, with Purna practices, but it wasn't pleasant, right? Constant neck pain. So if you're doing this, I would really advise you finding somebody who knows how to set you up in Sarvangasana in the shoulder stand so that your neck is staying in a curve, basically. And then, of course, like mentioned in all the inversions. Yeah.
Yeah,
What
it's
do
a
you want to
great
say?
reminder because I remember when I learned how to do shoulder stand, my teacher, oh, we always at least doubled the mat. Like we had something a little extra there.
Yeah.
We didn't maybe always have a pad, but we had pretty thick mats and we at least doubled them. And I do have to be careful with this one in general that I know that I've had some issues in before in the neck from probably because I haven't been using the prop. Yeah, so
Mm.
good reminder to
And if also the preparation, for example, I would never take anyone, not even if they practice all their life, just like this into Sarvangasana. I first prepare the shoulders to get there, right? So I build the class so that when I want to teach Sarvangasana, we have already moved the shoulders, opened them so much that it will be much easier. But when we go straight into it, of course, it can damage the neck. And a lot of people say this, oh, I don't want to do this pose. Oh, it's been never feel comfortable. But for example, in the trainings, we also teach like, you add more pads, you add less pads, you add a roll. So there's a lot of therapeutic things you can do because in the end, you want to do it, right? So you don't want to avoid it just because it doesn't feel good in the neck.
I do love this one, how it feels. And I always have it near the end of the class for that same reason to make sure that we're really warmed up before we do.
It's also a yin, right? It's the quality of yin. It slows you down. It always has to proceed the headstand. Oh, this comes first, definitely. So I have another picture here of, for example, how I would take people in the beginning in. I keep them at the wall just for the support. So it doesn't feel so much like, where I'm in the middle of the room and then you shift around. So again, a lot of neck pain comes from that when we do too much funny things with the shoulders. But when you have the wall there, it's much easier to roll the shoulders under the body and have that idea. So let's see if I don't have the headstand here, but it's just as important. So twists, since we talked about like also, the fire, because that ignites the fire, basically it's the digestions, massages the organs. So it should never be missed out. The thing is like that we need to know that you want to do the twists after the inversions and before the back bends. Because if you do the twist after the back bends, actually it can hurt your vertebrae. There can be like something going on. So kind of a twist, the twisting action is preparing for the back bend. And the spine is one of the major things, but of course, like we mentioned, also the digestion, which is super important for all the detox times. And then again, when it's summer, when it's hot, then you want to be maybe, doing a little bit less repetitions and doing it a little bit slower, working more on grounding. And here we have the back bends. I just put the picture here where I'm going back on the wall, but of course there is so many different back bends we can do. And they are so important, because we are so closed up. We're so tied up from like, working on the computers, here's all tight. We're like scared, like the diaphragm tightens up. So for this reason, doing back bends helps us really to remove all that stagnation. So there is this idea when you think about somebody who is old and talks about the past a lot, like older people do, they're nostalgic. And then they will, they will have like a little bit of a rounded back because they talk about the past. So people who are staying in the past, they have a hard time coming back. So when we do back bends, it actually puts us back into the present. So that's a reason, a big reason for doing back bends as well. And then of course, it helps alleviate depression because opening the heart somebody who is seriously depressed, it can be too much. Of course, we need to look at people where they are at that stage of their lives. And yeah, so backbends are amazing. And then I know we only have a few minutes left. Here is another one, Bhujangasana, which is amazing. We should do all the time. And then Supta Padangusthasana. I have not known this pose before I came to the Purna training, because it's one of the poses which helps to relieve back pain in general. After back bends, we always do it, but it's also part of the hip opening series because it stretches the hamstrings and as a result opens up the lower back. So I always tell people, if you don't do anything, do this. If you would do this once a day, and this is really like there is the word for tridoshik. What's the word in Ayurveda when you can do it in all seasons?
Try
Is there a
dosha.
word?
Hmm.
Is it also tridoshik when it's in the seasons, like
Hmm.
summer? Yeah. Yeah. So I feel that is something where, I don't know, people who really don't do much, when they do this, it helps them a lot because of our lifestyle once again.
I
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And it sounds like you give your students a little bit of homework too. I do that as well. And I'll say some things like, if this is the only pose you're going to do this week at home, this is a great one, for example. And, legs up the wall is really good for that too, because it's that easy, light inversion. Um, and people are more likely to maybe to do that at home because it's not so dynamic and you don't have to warm up for it first. And
Yes.
um, I really like what you said about an old age, how we're leaning forward and talking about the past. And, I think that's a good reminder. I also do a lot of heart openers, teach a lot of heart openers in the class, no matter what the season, backbends and heart openers, because we are spending most of the time in the opposite direction. Like you said, I think really because of the technology puts us, really forward in our postures and how you started in the beginning with the standing poses. So yeah, standing poses I would say um, can really be practiced any time of the year because, for example, in the last week I had my first outdoor yoga class for the year, and it was not warm yet. And I thought I cannot teach my list from the course material that has all the cooling poses. I was like, we will freeze out here in the wind, and it was lightly rainy. So we hid like under a birch tree and did the asanas together, and we just did a lot of standing poses. So
Mm.
to
Yeah,
keep
that's
the body
great.
warm without overheating it. So we didn't go into like tons of deep twists. We weren't trying to stay that kind of warm. We were just really standing to keep the body from getting cold or cooling down too.
Mm.
So that would be a
Yeah.
good sort of alteration to do if you're following through the summer course material for the yoga, or it's summertime but you have one of those cooler days. Don't do all these cooling poses on the ground. You're going to probably
Yeah.
be chilled
And
out.
it's funny because at the summer house, I also practice outside. I don't have really inside space. And when it's not warm, I go to the trampoline and I go to my kids' trampoline and I jump to warm up and then I do the sun salutation and then do the standing poses just because, it's very difficult for me to start when I'm cold. So it's definitely important to warm up. And of course, inside, I wouldn't do that, but outside, I love that.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. And I hope that most people in the course know that jumping is super healthy. Um,
Super.
our
Mm.
bones, they need that sort of impact actually. At our house, we have a mini trampoline and we jump off of it and like land in the grass, like intentionally trying to
Yes.
sort of smash the bones down
It
onto the ground.
strengthens the bones, yeah. And imagine the lymphatic system. It
Yeah.
boosts the lymphs amazingly. So it's absolutely super. I know there's these small rebounders as well. But here, just in the last picture, you see here at the studio, we have also this yoga wall. So you don't even have to learn all these more difficult inversions because here you can just hang. That's what people love the most. Justine, do you remember? It's been a while since you were in a class.
I love the yoga wall, and also my second teacher, who I did my yoga training with, Sarah Joy Marsh, we had a yoga wall. So we had
All
a
right.
yoga wall in my training, and we did a lot of heart openers on that yoga wall. So her position was really leading with the heart. That's like her yoga is like Sarah Joy leading with the heart, and so I have carried that into my teaching as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people say that they do. Just some people cry after. They're like, I've never felt so open in my heart and my chest before after one class. It's like amazing. So I know you've experienced that too, where somebody will come just for their first class and it's life changing for them. And that I know for us is always like, that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so beneficial. I think it should be just like we do brush our teeth every day and clean the tongue. Nowadays, hopefully, also more people do that. That you say like, hey, I need to move in an efficient way so that I feel great. I mean, I cannot imagine a day where I cannot do some asana because I would feel like crap.
Mhm. Yeah, I can tell when it's been some days where without, and I only have my one weekly class that I teach, and I can tell like the day before, like I'm starting to get really stiff because I haven't done like a proper full, you know, hour and a half, probably
Yeah.
almost 1 week. So it's
Yeah, that's right. That was the whole reason I became a yoga teacher because I was such a lazy person. I'm like, how will I ever, do my own practice? And then becoming a yoga teacher, like you have to. And so, there it goes. And at some point you want to, you don't have to anymore. So that should be the feeling as well.
yeah. So tell everybody, are you open for the summer or what is your summer schedule there at the studio in Helsinki?
Yeah. We are open all summer long. We have a little bit less classes than normally. We do have classes every evening now during the summer, no morning classes, but also then when August starts, then we also have during the day classes if people feel like coming then. We offer different kind of classes in different levels. We do also have prenatal yoga, postnatal yoga, and specifically yoga wall classes. We also do workshops and yoga teacher trainings if somebody's interested, ever wanted to learn more. So yeah, very welcome. And I think I left you last time already a code for people to get a discount if they want, but we can share that same link again.
Yeah, when I post the recording, I'll make sure to put the discount code there. And also, if you could send me that a short little that great quote that you said about the position of the neck when we're forward,
Yeah,
staying behind in the past, I think that would be great. I'll post that there with the recording. So
totally.
thank you so much for joining us today, Nicola, and sharing some of your insights about yoga, getting a little deeper into some of the asanas, and we'll have you back on again, hopefully in the autumn time.
Nice. Thank you so much, Justine, and thank you for the course. I'm really enjoying it a lot.
Thank you. We love having you there.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Bye.